Hello, my friends. Today I want to talk to you about Economical Update, March 28th, 2023. So the war against Ukraine hit the economy of the aggressor state very hard. To stabilize it, the Russians can sell gold from foreign exchange reserves and reduce state budget expenditures. It is not worth talking about any investment policy of the budget because it is practically been reduced to nothing. There are two main areas: military spending and spending on social programs. With military spending, the situation is very simple. If you want to keep tanks from 60s and 70s previous century still moving, you have to pay for the restoration and transportation to the war zone. The option is this: either you pay or you have nothing to fight for. I mean, this is the option for Russia because nobody helps them with tanks for now. If you are going to buy Chinese or Iranian drones, you have to pay money there. Promises that one day you will pay off with oil, no one will take it into account in real world. You have to pay real money there. It should be clear: as long as Russians continue to sell energy carriers, money will flow, but the balance of income will be very bad. They will be in short supply all the time. Already today, we hear from Prigozhin that there is a catastrophic shortage of ammunition. For those who doesn't know, Prigozhin is one of the criminal guys who hire prisoners, promising them they will be free to go anywhere after 6 months in Russian forces. But in fact, most of them, like 90% or something, just die in first month. So this is the first sign that the Russian military machine is beginning to actively skip. It can be restored only by an additional infusion of funds which are not available. These are consequences and real pressure on sanctions policies that exist today, and I want very thanksgiving to you all guys that you support these sanctions. You support your government does these governments do these sanctions. How does the Russia save the banking system by burning pensions of Russians? The agony of the sanctioned Russian economy continues, and the rate of deterioration of the general situation cannot be pleased. Although Moscow is quite successful in circumventing many restrictions, and that Western countries does not extend them to a number of industries, stagnation is still accelerating. At the same time, the Russian military political command sometimes takes the most absurd steps just to adjust the schedules for reports, as well as for the sake of obtaining fake improvements. For example, in order to prevent total impoverishment of the population and at least somehow pay pensions, the Russians are frantically printing money. The agony of the sanctioned Russian economy continues, and the rate of deterioration of the general situation cannot be pleased. From economic necessity to political expediency, one step. In fact, in just 1 year since the start of full-scale war, Russia has turned into a solid fake country where members of the government try to resuscitate the half-decompromised body of the economy, and propagandists like Stalin and Turich in the first days after his death pretend that the leader is still breathing. De facto, the terrorist country is rapidly um, disintegrating from the economic map of the world, but Putin's subordinately hopes for a financial unification with China because he has nothing else left. This is very similar to the situation with the sale of a bankrupt company to some giant when before the offer the scam accountants tried to inflate the financial indicators and artificially increase the value of the asset. The situation with its banking system can serve as a vivid proof that the Russian economy resembles a puffer fish that inflates itself to appear larger than it really is. Any person who knows even a little about finance knows that the most important indicator of the real estate of the economy is the discount rate. This is the interest rate at which the central bank grants loans to commercial institutions and also accepts deposits from them. The figure set by the regulator indicates how healthy the economy is. If it is lowered, banks will be able to give people cheap money, and this will lead to the appearance of large amounts of money in the population and increase the demand of goods. Inflation will accelerate and prices will rise. An increase in the discount rate of the contrary reduces the attraction of banks, enterprises, and individuals to loans while the number of deposits increases. Everyone wants to invest money at a higher interest rate, which reduces the rate of inflation. Hope it is clear. If not, please drop your questions down below the video. Obviously, inadequate decisions of the central bank regarding the establishment of the discount rate can lead to an incredible distortion which is happening in Russia. The explanation for this is very simple. Those responsible for finances are forced to dance to the tune of the political whims of the state leadership. First, the central bank instantly raised the discount rate to a record, attention, 20%, which allowed to the dollar rate not to fly into space. Secondly, strict restrictions on deposit withdrawals and currency exchange restrictions were introduced in Russia. The third concept, the step was to close the stock exchanges with a ban on the sale of shares. For those who doesn't know, I have to explain that there were a kind of small shops where you could change Russian money to United States dollars or euro. However, since it was impossible to simplify, forget about all the problems, and almost the entire business could actively die in a few months, the main financiers of the aggressor country had let go the situation little by little, slowly, and then when Russia was spending increased to such levels that it was simply impossible to recover, the real action began. In addition to Russian completely inadequate demands to pretend to solve problems and not dump all the bitterness of life on the population at the same time, this continued the trend of multiplying the economy by zero. Fires began to flame in all industries, and Russian officials immediately started extinguishing them with gasoline. The developers were saved by bankruptcy. For example, after the start of a full-scale war and the deterioration of the general economic situation, Russians began to think mostly about how to exchange their son or husband for a multi-million dollar compensation and where to get at least a couple of extra rubles for food. The same small part of the inhabitants of the swamps who were able to earn at least some adequate money began to look for options to convert to dollars in order to save savings. It is clear that such a microclimate was not at all conducive to investment in real estate, so banks were ordered to give out mortgage loans. They said that if the developer sells off a bunch of apartments, the problem will disappear somewhere, but the market doesn't work like that because some has to pay for such pleasure anyway. It would be all right, but there is a huge nuance. Almost a quarter of home loans in 2022 were taken by Russians whose monthly payment obligation exceed 80% of income. That is, these people will never be able to pay for real estate and no institution would ever recognize them as solvent and would not agree to grant them loan. However, Russia is a fake country where such a thing is quite possible, and this can lead to the bankruptcy of a huge number of banks and the collapse of the real estate market as such. After all, when 80% of mortgages are for deals with new buildings and the rate on many loans is lower than 1%, it is even worse than MMM performed by Pushilin. At the same time, after this pyramid collapses, the creditors will not get anything at all because the value of the mortgage housing in this case will cost even less than the life of a prisoner in Wagner Group, Prigozhin's Wagner Group, the guy that we were talking about at the first part of this video. However, what seems more epic is the fact that when the central bank intervened in the situation, it was already too late, and the sharp tightening of conditions for issuing mortgages practically made developers enthusiasts. Thus, according to the Register, in February 2023 in Moscow, the sale of real estate of the primary market fell by as much as 48%. Investments left the chart. About the situation in other cities of Russia where the demand for real estate has always not been so great, and the changes of the ordinary population to see a million rubles leave are equal to Putin's opportunities to take Kyiv, there is no need to say. What will the Kremlin leaders do now in a situation where no step will lead to improvement? The question is theoretical. However, it must be admitted that war criminals stubbornly demonstrate inadequacy and unfortunately are quite successful in postponing the realization of their economy death. Also, maybe they will come up with options on how to reset the timer on this bomb. Imitation of banking success. It is not even worth explaining how Russian banks feel in this situation. Of course, everything is fine with them. However, only in words, Sberbank, for example, on March 20, very unexpectedly announced the payment of record dividends to owners of shares 25 rubles per share. The decision to pay dividends was made by the managers of the financial institution due to very good forecasts and excellent results for 2022. He said since the largest bank in Russia was able to earn as much as 270 billion rubles net, it is possible to please the holders for securities. Only there is a small nuance. In 2021, Sberbank made a profit 1.25 trillion um, dollars, and all the achievements of the financial institution consist in the fact that it didn't work at a loss. To the topic in Russia, there are only two ways, both lead to impoverishment. The scheme with record payouts is extremely simple bypassed by Gazprom in August of last year. Insiders who know about the intention to announce dividends started buying shares of Sberbank even when they cost 156 rubles. After the supervisory board officially announced its intention to pay more than the actual value of the shares, their value jumped to the mark of 202 rubles. It was exactly the same with the gas producing corporation when investors rushed to buy securities in the hope of making extra money. But by the end of the divided break, the price had fallen sharply. Everyone who had insider information got rich. Gazprom managed to earn additional money out of thin air, and ordinary market players financed it. Imitation of success. Maybe the situation in Russia banking sector is not as bad as it seems at first glance. Suddenly, everything is fine with the squeezed Tinkoff Bank? No, it seemed. This swamp giant deftly goes to the bottom. Pension savings are burning with a blue flame. However, even the situation with Tinkoff cannot be called as gloomy as possible because the Russian VTB, such a financial institution with assets of more than 20 trillion rubles, which has never shown its effectiveness at all. To illustrate the professionalism of the bank, it is worth nothing that its supervisory board went public with the sale of its shares in the crisis of 2008. At the same time, the value of the security apparently was determined by the price of an A4 sheet and was as much as 14 kopecks. It's less than 1 cent than exchange rate. Since that time, VTB has been constantly pouring in a lot of money and carrying out recapitalizations. But as of March 2023, the bank's share it's worth 1.8 kopecks or less than 2 cents. Phenomenal negative growth of 96% in constant currency. At the same time, apparently, no one from the Russian leadership cares at all that one of the giants of the market can demonstrate at least some income solely at the expense of attracting additional investments. And it is VTB that generously distributes loans to all unprofitable state-owned companies. That is, the money constantly goes nowhere with no chance of its multiplication. It is not surprising that when almost all Russian banks fell into the abuse, the um, offspring of the Soviet Bank also deteriorated. What should be done when such a powerful financial institution is once again insolvent and the state has no money? That's right, throw Russian pensions into her furnace. Only it should be not called burning of savings, but an attractive investment. At the beginning of 2023, VTB announced that it had found people willing to purchase all its shares as part of the second additional issue. Everyone who saved their money for a safe old age in the pension funds of Gazprom Bank became lucky. In total, Russians brought 1,155,6 billion rubles to the four pension funds of Gazprom Bank. And although not all these funds will be spent on the purchase of VTB shares, at least now, there is no doubt that none of these investors will ever wait for the financial institution, not a penny of payment. After all, if a non-state pension fund started investing in such risky enterprises, and this is also due to political necessity, as they say, we have bad news for you, and everyone doesn't care that, according to the law, non-state pension funds must invest in reliable assets. In this context, the slogan of the Gazprom funds, with care for your future, looks as epic as the news on their website with the headline about guarantees from the state. So, according to the open data, the French giant group Crédit Agricole, which officially announced its withdrawal from the Russian market, received 3.7 million euros in profit in the 12 months of last year. Hungarian OTP Bank in Russia earned significantly less than in 2021, but brought its owners 3.9 billion rubles. And here is Raiffeisen Bank, which even recognized the DPR and LRP and generally became the number two bank in the aggressor's country. It's just a kind reminder that Raiffeisen Bank is German bank. The Austrian bank. The profit of this bank subsidiary increased by 4.3 times and amounted to 2 billion euros. Such indicators are due only to the simple fact that these banking institutions have not been sanctioned and are not cut from SWIFT. They instantly became monopolists in the market of money transfers in Russia, who gladly helped the population of the terrorist country to maintain financial ties with the world without any restrictions. But what about United States and European countries? When they retire in different countries, due to the rapid aging of the population, many countries began to increase their retirement age. China currently has one of the lowest retirement ages, 60 for men and 55 for white-collar workers, and 50 for female factory workers. We would like to remind you that in Ukraine, in order to retire, one must reach the age of 60 and accumulate at least 30 years of insurance experience. The European Union average is 64.3 years for men and 63.5 years for women. In most European countries, according to recent data, the current retirement age is 65 and over. Among the European member states, Greece, Italy, Luxembourg, and Slovenia have the lowest current retirement age at 62, both men and women. As for early retirement, it varies from 58 years for women and 59 years for men in Lithuania and almost 63 years and 7 months in Germany. The preferred early retirement age is in most European countries is 62. For example, in Sweden, Portugal, Norway, Italy, Greece, and Austria. Protests in France due to raising the retirement age. France used to retire at 62, but the Senate recently decided to make changes and extend the retirement age by another 2 years to 64, which caused mass protest and opposition from trade unions. According to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, at least 100,000 people took to the streets in Paris. Protesters clashed with the police, who fired tear gas and water cannons in the response. In connection with these riots, 80 people have already been arrested, 33 of them in Paris. Despite this, the unions are calling the protests a success and calling on people to take to the streets again on Tuesday, March 28th, so today. In general, the protests have been going on for about a month and a half. French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said the pension reform, which will raise the retirement age for many people to 64 from the current 62, is necessary to stabilize the pension system's finances. Also, the reform provides that the insurance experience will be at least 43 years. And what about pensions in the United States? As the beginning of 2023, the number of pensioners in the United States is slightly more than 43 million people. This is 13% of the total population. In the United States, the pension system has the following structure. State the basis for the formation of payments, contributions, to which are made by both the employee and the employer. Accumulative, when the employee regularly contributes a specific amount to a pension fund, account, state or private, but not more than 50% of the annual income. And personal savings, when a person opens a bank account and accumulates a pension himself. The state system of pension savings is formed by contributions paid by the working populations to the pension fund. The rate is 15.3%. The employee and the employer pay 7.65% each. If you're an entrepreneur or a self-employed person, you will have to pay a double rate. So it will be 15.3%. Interesting, there is no specific general retirement age in the United States comparing to other countries. It all depends on your date of birth and profession. For example, military and police officers can retire after 20 years of service under certain conditions. In general, people retire at the age of 65, 67 in the United States. Finally, accumulated pension is also planned in Ukraine. Currently, a solidarity pension is in effect in Ukraine when the population receives payments from the pension fund, which fuels the working population. However, due to the rapid aging of the population, in the inability to provide the population with a decent level of payments, Ukraine is planning to introduce a cumulative pension in parallel. It will cost in the fact that Ukrainians will start saving part of the contributions to personal pension accounts, and part will continue to be paid into the general pension fund. In an interview with Channel 24 Ukrainian channel at the end of 2022, the head of the tax committee, Danilo Hetmantsev, noted that according to the improved indicator of the International Labour Organization in Ukraine, the ratio of working people and pensioners is about 1:1. Taking into account the fact that even according to the improved indicator of the International Labour Organization, 2.4 million people have lost their jobs, and we have 11.3 million pensioners. We have actually equalized the number of working people and the number of pensioners today in Ukraine. In January of this year, Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal emphasized that the introduction of mandatory pension savings is one of the priorities for 2023. According to him, the reform consists in the fact that employed Ukrainians will have their own pension savings accounts. Funds will go there from three sources: employer's contribution, the state contribution on a partially basis with the employer, voluntary contributions of citizens. To my mind, I think this is a kind of attempt to copy, with probably with some modifications, and pension system of the United States. That is, in fact, a similar pension system will work in Ukraine as in the United States. But it is worth nothing that three-level pension system is not some know-how for Ukraine. The reform began in our country back in 2004 when the laws on mandatory state pension insurance and on non-state pension insurance were adopted. But Ukraine has not switched to a three-tier system over the years. What are current pensions in Ukraine? The size of the pension in March, more than 10 million Ukrainians had their pensions indexed. The average amount of indexation was from 400 to 700 hryvnias, which is, for your understanding, 400 hryvnias is exactly $100. So the indexation was from 400 to 700 hryvnias, which is approximately from 1 to 200 US dollars. And the maximum amount was 1,500 hryvnias with which is almost 400 US dollars. Also, pension supplements are waiting for working pensioners in April. Recalculation will be carried out for 600,000 people. The minimum pension in Ukraine, like the maximum, is tied to the living wage for people unable to work, which in 2023 is 2,000 hryvnias or $500. By the way, such a pension was indexed by 100 hryvnias in March. In order to retire at the age of 60 in 2023, you need to accumulate at least 30 years of insurance experience. Those who do not have enough insurance experience at the age of 60 will be able to retire at the age of 63, provided they have at least 20 years of experience. This is the place I have to mention that Ukrainians and European Union citizens and United States citizens or Canadian citizens have quite different life length. I mean that probably in an average life length in the United States can be 75 or something, but in Ukraine it will be 65 for men and a little bit different for women. So Ukrainians whose insurance experience will be from 15 to 20 years will be able to start receiving payments from the state at the age of 65. If someone has less than 15 years experience, then upon reaching of the age 65, instead of pension, they will be able to receive social assistance from the state, which is less than minimum pension. It is also worth nothing that the length of insurance for retirement will increase every 12 months until 2028. This is indisputable problem because most Ukrainians simply will not have enough of it for retirement. On average, the population retires with about 32 years of insurance experience, and this is only a little more than a half of what is required. Pension abroad for Ukrainians. Due to Russian aggression and a full-scale war, a large number of people left Ukraine, including pensioners or those who reached retirement age while already abroad. At one time, the Ukrainian authorities concluded interstate agreements on social security, so that the population who lived abroad for a long time and paid taxes there had the right to a pension. Agreements on social security of Ukraine with each country can be divided into two types, according to the territorial principle and according to the proportional principle. In some cases, pension fund of Ukraine will pay the entire pension on the basis of Ukrainian and foreign work experience and will take into account the salary received abroad. In others, experience gained abroad gives the right to a pension in Ukraine and allows you to claim payments from the pension fund of the other states. Agreement has been concluded with 23 countries: Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Hungary, Moldova, Belarus, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Moldova, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Estonia, Spain, Portugal, and Poland. So most of the European countries. In 2012, Ukraine and Poland concluded an agreement on social security, so Ukrainians can receive a pension in the neighboring country as well if they worked officially and pay social contributions. To receive a pension in Poland, you must have the necessary experience, 20 years for women and 25 years for men, reach retirement age 60 and 65 respectively. The last place of work must be in Poland. Yeah. So what is the condition and future plans of the Ukrainian economy will be able to pay following responsibilities? Since the war began, the Ukrainian economy started to be dependent from the credits for at least 50%. It must be underlined that most of the money are loans that Ukraine will pay back in the future, and only little amounts are really donations. Most of the donations are done from the USAID fund, so Ukrainians are totally thankful to the citizens of the United States as it is from their taxes. And of course, we are totally thankful to other countries who support Ukraine and make their own contributions. Negotiations between IMF and the Ukrainian authorities were effective, so they reported that the mission of the International Monetary Fund, headed by Kevin Gray, held political discussions with the Ukrainian authorities in Warsaw from March 8th to March 15th. The subject of the negotiations was Kyiv's request regarding the program supported by the fund. According to the representative of the IMF, the discussions between the fund and the Ukrainian authorities were productive and significant progress was achieved in agreeing on a number of strategies that could become the basis of the future program. It is reported that the discussions should end in the coming days. There will be definitely an assistance, although the amount was not specified in the IMF's official statement. The Financial Times, citing its own sources, reports that the IMF is finalizing work on a 4-day loan program for Ukraine in the amount of 15.6 billion US dollars, and that a person close to the negotiation claims that the aid announcement is inevitable. The publication also reports that the fund will announce its decision in a few days. What were the conditions for granting a loan to Ukraine? In order to receive a loan from IMF, Ukraine had to fulfill 5 structural tasks from the fund. In the particular, develop a plan to repay the budget debt in 2023 and beyond, approve the concepts of checking banks and approaches to stress tests, develop a plan to perform the social protection system to provide targeted assistance to the needy, cancel 2% simplified tax and renew tax inspections and fines for not using cash registers, to approve the new supervisory board of Naftogaz of Ukraine. I have to explain a little bit about 2% simplified tax. So we have a kind of entrepreneurs, simple entrepreneurs that are doing, let's say, they sell coffee, they have a small restaurant or something. So they always had a simple tax, 5% out of income, not out of profit, but just out of income. So let's say if your check is $100, then you have to pay to the government 5%. But now, because of the war, the government mitigated the rule to 2%. But because of these new financial plans, our government confirmed they will cancel the 2% simplified tax and renew tax inspections and fines for those not using cash registers. So the Ukrainian side completed all 5 tasks. However, the final decision on the allocation of funds is made by the board of directors. Currently, the parties agree on how Ukraine will fulfill the requirements of the credit program, in particular, fight corruption. Also, Ukraine and the IMF are actively cooperating on the agreement on cashless monitoring, which is also an important component of the program. Dear friends, just a kind reminder, don't forget to subscribe, put the thumbs up so you will not miss the video and support this important sharing of the information. Send to the people you know in text messengers and on Facebook. And you will, and if you want to support me with this job, in the details down below, you may find my PayPal address. Uh, so difficult times await the world economy in 2023 promises to be much worse than average. Kristina Georgieva, IMF director, said. Global growth will slow to below 3% as economic activity is weighed down by the effects of the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, Russian war in Ukraine, and tightening monetary policy. Even with the best forecast for 2024, global growth will remain well below the historical average 3.8, she said. Georgieva argues that the risk of geo-economic fragmentation of the world economy, when the world will be divided into several competing economic blocs, has sharply increased in the world. According to the head of the IMF, such a scenario will make everyone poorer and more vulnerable. These factors mean that the outlook for the global economy is likely to remain weak over the medium term. Also, she pointed that the turmoil in the banking sector. Georgia noted that the increase in interest rates by almost of the world's central banks led to this. In her opinion, the Chinese economy has a good chance in the current situation. In 2023, China will account for approximately one-third of global growth, which will contribute to the long-awaited development of the world economy. Beyond its direct contribution to global growth, our analytics shows that 1 percentage point increase in China's GDP leads to an average 0.3 percentage point increase in growth in other Asian economies. So what are the consequences? For me, it means that the changes will be fast and can be unpredictable as they are following military and political changes. Please share your ideas in the comments down below. This is all for today. See you later. Bye bye.